What did you do as a teenager that you will never tell your parents? Story 1. Setup: sister is 4 years older than I, straight as an arrow, the type of sibling who enjoyed snitching on her younger brother. No worries, she's away at college. I am the exact opposite. Always in trouble, always playing it fast and loose. I'm a senior in high school. I'm holding down a job, getting decent grades, and my parents decide that they can finally trust me enough to take a vacation and leave me in the house. They hire a house sitter, John, who doesn't care what I do as long as I don't burn the place down. On a fine Saturday morning, I wake up, pour myself a drink from my father's locked booze stash, and put on some corn. I'm wearing a pair of undies and nothing else. 10 minutes later, surprise, my sister walks through the door. Fortunately, I hear the car just in time to shut off the TV and throw a blanket around my mostly bare body parts. Sis notices, of course, that I'm hanging out in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, face red as a beet. Hey, I didn't know you were coming. I'm gonna jump in the shower. End of the story, right? Wrong. Sis finds my drink, spiked with dad's booze. I'd finished it off, but she detected the smell. Unbeknownst to me, she wraps the cup in saran wrap, sealing in the smell. She writes my parents a note telling them how she found the cup next to my chair when she popped in for a surprise visit. She places the cup in the note in my parents' bathroom. A couple of days pass. I'm preparing for my parents' imminent return by cleaning the house. I find the note in the cup, hidden away. Not only does it implicate me, it implicates John, the house sitter. Seems that my sister also found a stash of rubber elsewhere in the house. I read it. I'm beside myself. I take the saran wrap off the cup, rinse it, and replace the contents with plain Coke. I then show the note to John, the house sitter. John: well, she's a bit on edge. The rubber is mine, just part of my overnight kit. Why was she snooping through my things? Me: yeah. The rest was like watching a predictable yet perfectly choreographed movie. My parents arrive home. John pulls them aside to talk about the note and the cup. They sniff the cup and smell nothing. They read the note and interpret this as paranoid delusion. My sister gets a stern lecture on the dangers of snooping and invading the privacy of others, and I, the 17-year-old drunk who nearly got caught choking the chicken in the living room, got an apology from my parents. My lips are sealed forever. I get that the sister's insane, but I'm just confused about the house sitter. Why did he have a house sitter at 17? Story 2. Not me, but my cousin. His parents go away for the weekend with explicit instructions to not take the boat out. As soon as they round the corner, he's pulling the boat out of the garage. My cousin Tim and his friend Eric go to a local lake to go water skiing. Eric is pulling Tim behind the boat, and Eric starts to go in circles to make waves for Tim to jump. Eric is sitting on the edge of the boat while driving, so he can more easily look back to make sure Tim hasn't fallen. The boat hits a big wave and Eric is tossed out of the boat. Now the boat is going in circles with Tim skiing behind it and nobody driving. It is getting closer and closer to the docks with each pass. Eventually, Tim swings wide and swims as hard as he can to get out of the water before the boat comes back around. Someone on one of the docks sees what is going on and jumps in the boat and shuts it off, just as it scrapes one of the docks. They took the boat home, had a buddy repair the scratches, and never said a word to my aunt and uncle. Story 3. My time to shine. In my senior year of high school, I snuck out of the house at like 2 a.m. to get some. My parents were a little psycho and put bells on the front and back doors, in case of burglars, but they didn't put them on the laundry room door, which led to the garage. The garage had a side door in it that led outside, so obviously that was my way out. The problem with that side door is that it's a bit hard to tell when it's locked since you can always get out, but not necessarily back in. So me being stupid and hormonal just assumed it was fine and went along my merry way. Did the deed, then when I tried to get back in, I found the door locked. Crap. I tried every other possible entrance, all locked. But I had my phone and an idea so crazy it just might work. I called my mom and in my best helpless daughter voice cried, "Mommy, I woke up in the front yard and the door is locked. I'm so scared." She came right out and got me. I mumbled something about sleepwalking. Then she made me waffles since I was so distressed. My mom still tells this story at family get-togethers. I now have a reputation as a crazy sleepwalker. Story 4. In high school, my mom was really broke. My sister and I lived with her, and we had recently moved into a house with my mom's new boyfriend. He'd been such a cool guy until we all moved in together. He stopped paying his share of rent and utilities, and my mom was, and still is, woefully underpaid, was covering everything herself, including food for the whole house, all of our phone bills, and our car payments and insurance. Money was so very hard to come by for us. Just getting by was becoming a way of life for us. Winter came along, and the temperatures dropped below 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Mom worked mornings, and her boyfriend refused to drive us anywhere before noon, so we had to figure something out. My dad decided to step in and drive my sister to school. He's still in our lives, we just don't live with him and we hardly saw him until this point. She was in grade 10 and had decided to stay at the same school as she had been for years earlier. I wanted to change and went to a closer school. Still a 20 to 30 minute walk, but far closer than hers. The winter was sapping my energy and making me sick on my long walks to and from school. Something had to be done. My mom got me a bus pass. She saved up and spent $100 on it for 4 months of busing. It was so much easier than walking and made my life so much better. I was so relieved to not be walking, as I had a medical issue with my nuts and walking was getting pretty hard. But that's another story. The part that I'll never tell her, I lost it within a week. I cannot figure out how. Maybe it was stolen or it fell out of my wallet in the bus. I don't know. I was so sad and felt so unbelievably guilty that I had refused to tell her. I kept my schedule the same and left when I normally would to catch the bus, but instead of busing, I turned down a side street and rushed as fast as my half-frozen legs and nuts would go without killing my stamina. I barely made it to my classes on time for 4 months, all the way into spring when it started warming up. When the pass would have expired, I was surprised one morning to find a new one left out for me. My mom put money away each paycheck for all that time because she thought the bus meant so much to me. It was very touching and I thanked her, gave her a kiss on the head and acted like it was normal. I still feel so wrong about it, and I don't ever want to tell her. She tried so hard for me and I just want her to feel like a great mom because she deserves it. That's so cute. She's a wonderful mom, but what happened to his balls? I can't stop thinking about what it could be. Hey, guess what? Our team just introduced Rufus rugs. Premium, custom, hand-tufted rugs. Imagine having your own unique rug that perfectly reflects your style. Whether you're a dedicated Naruto fan or simply adore Pokemon and can't resist displaying bus toys, we can turn your dreams into reality. We can create almost anything you want. Don't wait. Dive deeper into the world of Rufus rugs by clicking the first link in the description. Story 5. I'm not proud of this anymore, but after I realized that my parents had stashed all the liquor behind the washer and dryer, I totally started taking a few shots here and there. Once my friends found out I had access to my parents' redneck liquor cabinet, we overdid it one weekend at the beach, and I panicked because this time, I knew my parents would notice. But I also had to pee and there were no public restrooms at that beach, so I went behind a sand dune and peed in a fast food cup. Then poured it back into my dad's mostly empty rum bottle. Drunken teenage logic decided that I'd had enough rum that day, that I had just been borrowing it from good old dad, so I gave it back. I'll never know if my parents used their rum for anything, but what I can say for sure is that they attended a party every January and brought their own homemade brew, which was part rum. There's been a few stories that people could eventually tell their parents. This is not one of them. Story 6. Snuck out of the house with a friend while I was staying over with her to meet a group of boys. She slept with one of them in a truck while the rest of us, me and the other 2 guys, hung around in the desert at night trying not to notice the truck rocking back and forth. Must have been 14 or so. Never done anything like that before or since. I went with her because I was afraid she'd get in trouble with a boy by herself, so I wanted to watch over her. We got caught by her parents, who told me they were going to tell my parents. I prepared to be grounded for life. Then her dad changed his mind and told me I was a good kid and he would let this one go. But we had better not sneak out of his house again. Needless to say, he went through this a lot with his daughter. I never told my parents and never will, and I'm 28 now. Story 7. When I was about 15, I took half an eighth of mushrooms and some quercetin, went downstairs to watch a movie with my parents. My parents were always fighting back then. They really hated each other and I hated them as well, but for some reason that night was very pleasant. We were all laughing and joking and having a genuinely good time. Meanwhile, the walls around them were breathing and the carpet was swirling beneath me. I was having trouble focusing on their faces. That would be the quercetin. But I wasn't in the least bit paranoid that they may know I was going through it. It was an extremely strange night. My dad and I are friends now and we've talked about our substance use when we were younger. He was getting lit in his room while I was getting lit in mine, and angrily taking my grass when he caught me and using it himself, apparently. My mom was the one who was adamant against it, and dad just put on a show for her sake, but for some reason, I've never mentioned that night to him. Story 8. I really didn't want to do PE one day, but I didn't have a good reason, so I knew my dad wouldn't write me a note. So what I did instead was getting a plain piece of paper and asked him to sign it because we're doing a thing in English where we try to guess the personality of a person from their signature, which he totally bought. I then went to the printer and typed out your standard sick note and stuck the signed plain paper into the printer so that when the note printed, my dad's signature would appear at the bottom. I'll probably tell my dad this at some point because I'm actually kind of proud of myself for pulling it off. Where were these ideas when I was still in high school? Guess I wasn't as slick as I thought. I know you're slick too, watching this whole video without leaving a like on it and subscribing to the channel. Come on. Story 9. I used to sneak out and do stupid stuff with my friends in the neighborhood. Not illegal substances or drinking, but stealing stop signs, egging a house once, laying on the golf course, and having fun. I honestly thought my folks knew about it and that they were just on the kids will be kids mentality. I even got a ride home with the local police once or twice, but no, my parents had no clue what I was up to. I don't want to tell them, not because I worry about what they think of me, but rather that they would blame themselves for not seeing it. Story 10. When I was 18, I flew to Portugal to meet my boyfriend at the time, who was over there for the summer. One day we decided, screw it, this particular city is cool, but let's go exploring. So we packed our belongings, walked out to the edge of the city, and started hitchhiking. About a week and a half later, we passed through Portugal, Spain, and most of France, and my boyfriend decides he needs to find himself for some BS and dumps me in a petrol station in eastern France. So I wind up staying with some lovely Buddhists who are on a retreat in the mountains, then hitch various lifts back to Spain and fly home. When I got home, my parents asked me if I got up to anything fun. I said we did some traveling by train. I'm almost 30 now and it's still a secret. It's an interesting story, but I was so lucky it went relatively okay. I could have been one of those kids who goes missing or gets... Story 11. I was trying to convince my dad to buy me a new computer for college. He doesn't exactly like the fact that I play video games due to the Asian or Middle Eastern mentality of study till you drop, but I'd been doing it for so long that he begrudgingly accepted it after realizing it wasn't just a phase. However, he made it clear that he would only buy me a computer for the express purpose of helping me get a computer science degree. Shocker, right? Unfortunately, he wasn't tech savvy at all, so I searched online stores until I found a laptop that I wanted to replace my old one with. It was an $800 Asus gaming laptop with middle-of-the-road specs for the time. There was no way he would ever buy me a laptop that was built for the express purpose of gaming, so I used Inspect Element to replace all the instances of the word gaming in the product page with the word studying, and made sure not to reload the page when showing it to him because it would change the words back into gaming. It worked, and within 1 week I got my new studying computer. I gotta point out that he probably learned how to do it from studying something. Tiger Dad was right, and he deserved that laptop. Story 12. In my mid-teens, I went to an unsupervised birthday party with a mixed group of friends, boys and girls. The birthday girl wants to play truth or dare. Cute, right? It got grown up really fast. Long story short, we all watched each other do the deed. Bonus. Years later, my brother dated the random girl I did. He brought her over to meet the family. We recognized each other but said nothing, just shared a horrifying silence. When they were leaving, I heard my brother ask her if she got to meet me. She replied, "Oh yeah, I got to meet him." I cringed, and I've never stopped cringing. Story 13. Well, I was a pretty good kid growing up. Didn't smoke, drink, do illegal substances, or even do the deed growing up. I just never felt the need to. However, this one time I was about 14 years old. Pretty developed, and more so than my friends, and I constantly had attention from boys, and especially boys much older than me. I was going into my freshman year of high school, and this senior took an interest in me. Many nights of AOL chats, and we were hooked on one another. The thing was, he was 18, almost 19. Clearly, I couldn't tell my dad that his just barely 14-year-old wanted to date a man. So I did what any kid would do. Said I was going to a friend's house, and from there, she and I double dated to a movie. We were making out the entire film, and he kept trying to do more. When he begged me for some action, I kind of dropped him. I did that exact scenario probably 4 or 5 times during my freshman year. So yeah, my dad will never find out about all the grown men I was kissing in my freshman year of high school while he thought I was baking cookies and watching scary movies with my girlfriends. Everyone seems like they had a high school experience with 10 times as many crazy stories. Most people just played COD and got detention for dumb stuff. Story 14. I spent my first semester of university overseas in Egypt. I just turned 18. Conditions on the campus during that time weren't very stable. There was so much drama. Worker strikes, disease scares, power outages, etc., that I ended up spending very little time in the classroom. For those who don't know, Cairo is huge. The largest city in Africa and the Middle East. It makes Manhattan look like a little village. I want to say there are close to 10 million people living there, but even official government censuses are unable to get accurate data due to its size, which is always expanding. Anyway, I spend many nights doing all sorts of stuff that, in retrospect, seems really stupid. I spoke almost no Arabic, so I'd take a bus or taxi to the outskirts of town late at night and just walk around trying to talk with strangers. If I tried this anywhere in the States, people would mistake me for a raving lunatic. Sometimes I'd meet a group of strangers and they'd invite me to go somewhere with them, so I'd jump in their car and ride around all night. I ended up at parties in other towns, house music shows in the basements of foreign embassies, mosques, huge supermarkets, and lots of random hotels with swimming pools. There were so many people involved in these nightly adventures that I can't even remember them all or keep the names and faces straight. Never got to learn how old most of them were. Some were my own age and others considerably older. What they did for a living or much of anything else about who they really were, they just offered to take me along for the ride. I didn't drink alcohol or do illegal stuff during that time, but there are still entire weeks that are now a blur to me. I did very little sleeping. 2 memories that stand out in my mind are walking around the top floor of a dilapidated high-rise hotel and stumbling upon a seedy exotic animal dealer in the basement of an apartment building. He sold all kinds of endangered animals captured in sub-Saharan Africa, including lion cubs. I go into the weirdest shops and meet the craziest people. There was a young couple in their 30s whom I am especially thankful to have known. They spoke good English, and the man had a British accent. They used to drive me all over at night to these huge, sprawling neighborhoods where we just walked the streets. I think I met them at a mall. There was another guy whom everyone else seemed nervous around. I called him the Pirate. Good times, but I'd never try that again. Story 15. My parents didn't know Jack during my teenage years. My mom had pretty severe mental health issues, and my father had a level of apathy rivaling to that of a serial killer. Now, I was always kind of quiet and bookish, so I had no desire to go to parties or whatever. Dad also had an alcohol problem, so I was never too keen on drinking or substances. Once, though, my rich friend's brother was taking him and a few of my friends to the city, New York. He asked if I could tag along with him, and I come from small-town USA and hadn't ever been there before, despite the fact that we aren't really that far. Upstate New York is super rural, but if you drive a few hours down south, you'll hit the city. I went out with him at about 6 a.m. and didn't come back until midnight. We didn't really do anything dangerous or risky, sightseeing, M&M store, etc. But now that I look back on it, I never even asked him for permission. I just got on a train, left for a giant metropolis, and didn't come back for 16 hours. They never even asked to know where I went. Story 16. My first boyfriend was in my senior year of high school. I lived in a different city about an hour and a half away, and it was rare that I'd be able to see him. His truck had just been totaled, and my parents wouldn't let me have my own car, so it was a question of asking one of them on the weekends if I could borrow their cars. That was a hassle in and of itself. So I started being a bad kid for the first time in my life. I would wait until about 2 to 3 a.m., sneak upstairs, grab the keys, and sneak out. I would push in the clutch to roll out of the long driveway before even starting this car. This almost got me in big trouble once when the steering column locked, and from there I would drive down to see my boyfriend for a few hours. I'd be home before I had to wake up for school and before my parents got up. The kicker is, one day I was absolutely exhausted and had no business driving. My eyes were crossing and I was basically in and out while driving through a small town on the way home. My eyes shut and bump, bump, bump. What the heck? So I slammed on the brakes, I was only doing maybe 30, and looked behind me as a deer was scrambling to stand up and run away. Thankfully, he wasn't too hurt, but I was going to be if my dad realized what I had been doing. I called my boyfriend in a panic and took a few years off his life as I drove through the next few towns until I could stop at a secluded car wash area. There was a slight dent in the bumper and a ton of hair stuffed up in there. I did my best with the hair and reattached the hanging area of the bumper. Yeah. Drove back home, still panicked, got in the door and got into the kitchen just as my parents' bedroom door opened. I thought I was dead meat. Dad didn't even notice I was there as he beelined to the bathroom. Some guardian angel or something was on my side that night. So, a few years down the road, my boyfriend, now husband, and I were on a ski trip with my parents. My mom turned to us and started to enthusiastically share the story of how my dad had a deer that ran into his truck while it was parked on the side of the road. She was telling us about the hair in the hanging bumper and how it hadn't been there when my dad went to work, but he saw it on his way back to his truck. They will never know. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy What Messed Up Thing Did Your School Do? Story 2 is horrible. See you in that video.